you're like me, you probably have a lot of riffs and licks that you play, maybe even in a band, and you never really learn them in detail. Like every time you play it, you kind of go, oh, good, I got through it again. One riff that was like that for me, at least an intro that's actually pretty important, is the intro to Paradise City. And I recently did a Fix This Band episode where I showcased a band playing that song. So I did some research, I watched other bands playing it, other cover bands, and I realized that over half of the guitar players did not play the intro correctly. Now, of course, you don't have to play everything note for note unless you're in a tribute band. And by the way, a lot of the tribute bands were playing it correctly, but there were some that weren't. But I always like to feel confident in anything that I'm playing. And I never really quite felt that confidence when I played the intro to Paradise City. So here's how I typically played it anytime I played this on stage. I don't know why I never bothered to learn the details, but I decided to finally buckle down and do the work. And I realized after a lot of agonizing over the details that if you break it down to 4 basic ideas, this could be a very playable thing for anybody. So I'm going to show you those 4 things today. And one thing that's really cool about it is after you implement these 4 ideas, you'll be so close to the original that if you want to mess around a little bit, you can, and it'll still sound very much like what Slash does. You'll see what I mean in a little bit. So the first idea is to play a G chord, but the traditional version of a G chord. So ring finger on the lowest string, and then middle, and then pinky. That shape is used by a lot of country and folk players, but also like bands like the Eagles too. So if you're more of a rock player, you're probably used to doing G like this. That's how I play it. But for this tune, we have to do the tradish way of doing it. All right, let's strum through that. By the way, I'm using my Roland Jazz Chorus today, which I found out that's what Slash used in the studio. So I'm hopefully getting a pretty similar tone. All right. Here's the next idea. Get used to this picking pattern. We'll call that a motif. It's a pattern that you want to get really used to because you're going to use the whole thing or parts of it a lot in this intro. So what I'm doing is I'm going down, up, down, up, down, up. I watched Slash live and I see that he is doing that. I thought at first he was doing this because this is what I would have done. Down, up, down. That way you could do outside picking. So when you do an up on the high E string, you're less likely to miss it. The way Slash really does it, though, is after the strum, he does a downstroke on the high E, which is kind of risky, because if you miss it, there's nothing under it. But it's Slash. He's superhuman, so he doesn't have to worry about that. But really make sure your aim is good, hitting that high E with that downstroke. So, one more time. The third idea is to not just play the next few chords, but to hammer them down. So with the next chord, we're going to leave our pinky down the whole time, by the way. Leave your pinky where it is, first string, 3rd fret. We're going to hammer down on the C chord as we play the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings. Now, if you happen to hit the 5th string, that's fine, but it's really the higher notes I'm hearing being hammered on. You'll still hear a little bit of that low C, though. Now, the best part of it is you could play that low C immediately afterwards. Get used to that. We'll do a similar thing for the F chord coming up as well. After you do this hammer on to picking the low bass note, go back and start to do the motif of the picking. I love when you can learn one thing and then it keeps, repeating later because you did all the work already. So one more time from the top. Hammer on. Notice there's a little gap between when I hit the bass note and when I went to the high E string. But don't worry about that. We'll talk about that later. Now we're going to go to the F chord. This is actually an F add 9 because of the added pinky here. Very Beatles sounding. All right, so for this one, we can leave our index finger down from the previous chord and our pinky. We just have to hammer down the middle and ring fingers. So still play the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd string as you hammer down. What I like to do is hit the 4th string again right afterwards. So it's just the bass note again. Do this picking pattern. So it's a bit of a modified version of the previous ones. So we get. Then we're going to move back to the C, and we're going to do a hammer-on version of that while leaving our index finger and our pinky down from the previous chord. So you get this, that sound. Now we're going to do the picking, but we're going to do something a little different at the very end. Slash just lifts off incidentally, and it creates an open B string at the very end of that. So I'm going to throw it in just for a detail. So. And when I hit that open B string, I lifted everything up except for the pinky. It's going to stay behind. We're going to go back to the traditional G. It's hard for me to say. And we have one more idea coming up, but let's really see what's going on up until that point. So we have the G, picking, hammer on to the bass note. Now the quick F to quick C. Don't forget that open B to the G. Only do that much of the picking because we're going to do the final idea, which is this Sweet Home Alabama type fill that I just ignored completely. I knew it was in there, but I think I was just too lazy to actually learn it or something. So here's how it goes. Isn't that weird? Some people don't even know it's in there. So we have open G to 2nd fret hammer to open B. So I just pick that down, then up. Now open G to open B. Do a hammer on the open D to the 2nd fret. And then just a quick open G with an upstroke. And then back to the G chord. It's weird because it's bouncy. It's got this triplet feel to it. If you don't believe it's in there, go listen to it right now. He just throws it in real quick. Okay, so that 4th idea can be really tricky because you have to hold down the pinky and the ring finger while you do it with your middle finger. So it's kind of this crazy balance. You don't want to let go of everything. I've seen people go or something like that, and then they have to find the chord again afterwards. Just leave it down like Slash does. All right, I'll play through the whole thing slow now. Now, people wonder about that gap between the chords, right? Like this whole... The best part of it is that now that you have those foundations down, you can add whatever you want in between. So if you wanted to, you could go... Say I just incidentally hit the B string on the way to the highest string. Now this is the part where you get to do your own custom thing, because if you watch Slash live, he does just throw in certain hits here and there, and it's not always exactly the same. It's not like an exact science, but the foundations around it are very solid. So be sure to get those down first. Those are your foundations, and then fill in the middle with whatever you want. It's kind of fun. You get to play with it a little bit. Okay, hopefully that helps a lot of people out. I know it helped me out, and I'm going to feel a lot more confident the next time I have to play this live. Okay, everyone, we'll catch you at the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.